will be recorded and uploaded to the Fair Impact website on the event page after the session is complete. If you would not like to be part of the recording, please just keep your video off for the duration or send myself, Clara, or Deborah a message. We can take you out of the recording. So as I mentioned earlier, good morning and welcome to all of you who've recently just joined us. We've got a packed session today. So today's session will be on what is a data champion, how can they support good practice in data management and sharing. So just a bit about our Fair Implementation Workshop series. We have 3 more in the series. This series is aimed to help 3 key stakeholders. Firstly, research performing organizations, repositories and data service providers, and national level initiatives to become more familiar with FAIR enabling tools, approaches and methods. All of our workshops will be posted on the Fair Impact website with all of the full slide deck and the recordings that offer a chance to share information on recent developments, both within Fair Impact and other initiatives, as well as offering examples of good practice, practical tips and recommendations. And this one's sure to fill you with more information as well. So just a bit about Fair Impact. So this project is funded under the European Commission European Horizon program, and it's one of the Infra-EOS projects. The project builds on the work of the Horizon 2020 Fairs Fair project and is a coordination and support action focusing on expanding fair solutions in Europe. We have 28 partners from 10 member states and the UK. The project began back in June 2022 and comes to its conclusion next month at the end of May. So essentially, Fair Impact is working to support the vision of a European open science cloud where fair data can be shared and reused. Our work focuses on identifying current and emerging tools, methods, and approaches, supporting their adoption. A key aim for us is to help ensure that useful resources developed by one community of practice can be adopted by others. So just before we get into our presentations today, we just wanted to take you through a quick WooClap. We've got 2 questions to enable you to introduce yourselves. So I'm just going to go into WooClap itself. So you can either scan the QR code using your device on the screen, or you can type in wooclap.com and type in the event code ASOKLF. We can see that already 12 of you have joined us, which is great to see. So I know we've got a few of you in the room joining us today. So welcome to those of you who've just joined us as well. We'll look to get started shortly, but just kicking off with a couple of questions. So I'm going to move on to the first slide, but don't worry if you haven't joined already. You can simply do that by typing in wooclap.com and using the code ASOKLF. So to begin with, what country are you dialing in from? I know we have many of you signed in from different countries, and we can see UK, myself, Clara, are dialing in from Edinburgh today. Great representation from the Netherlands, from Germany, Finland, Lithuania, Australia. Welcome, Australia, down under as well. And I think this room is just cut out from light, so please excuse that. So we've got Portugal, France, Luxembourg, and Lithuania, Belgium, South Africa, Czech Republic. So plenty of you calling in from different countries as well. So it's fantastic to see so many of you as well. So I'm just going to move on to the next question, which is a bit about you and your work. So what is your role within your organization? This is great to give people a chance to understand where you're dialing in from, particularly for our speakers today as well. So I can see someone's typed in, thank you, Isa. So the event code is at the top of the screen as well. But if you type in WooClap, wooclap.com, and enter the code ASOKLF, and tell us what is your role. So I can see data steward is particularly popular, being the central piece. With research data manager, we have a fellow communications, that's my own role, marketing communications, several librarians, a project assistant, science manager, specialists. So it's great to see so many people from different backgrounds as well. So you are all very welcome today, and thank you for joining us as well. So I'll just give you another 10 seconds or so to enter the information. This is really beneficial for us today. So thank you all for joining us and for telling us a bit about your role today as well. It's fantastic again to see so many people from different countries, from different roles as well. So yeah, a big thank you, and training and product manager as well. So yeah, certainly a wide variety of backgrounds as well. So I know you're going to be in for some very interesting talks as well. So I think at this point, I'm going to hand over to Deborah. So I'm just going to take this off my screen. But the presentation will remain open. So please do continue to put your role in. If you have just joined us, it's wooclap.com and the code is ASOKLF. And do continue to put in these and we'll share these results afterwards as well.
Yeah, actually, I'll take this one and just give a quick overview of the session. So we will have talks from three organizations, SONRI, which is the Irish Data Steward Network, then the University of Cambridge and the University of Bologna, and they will all be presenting their experiences in establishing or running a Data Champions program. And Deborah will say a little bit more about each of them before their presentations, and we will take questions for all of them at the end. But feel free to add your questions in the chat during the presentations if you wish. So now, yes, I will give the floor to Deborah to introduce the first speaker.
Thank you, Clara, and thank you, Al. So I'm not going to say too much in introduction to the speakers. In fact, I'm just going to really recap what's on the slide there, because I think it's most important that we hear from the speakers, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot about their expertise and backgrounds during their presentation. But first of all, it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Aoife Coffey. Aoife is the Research Data Coordinator at University College Cork Library, and Aoife is also co-chair of SONRI, which is the Irish Data Stewardship Network project. And Aoife joins us from Ireland, a former colleague of mine, so it's really great to welcome you today. Aoife, so take it away, please share your slides, and we look forward to hearing from you. So I'll just give Aoife a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds to share her slides. Let us know if you have any problems.
Thanks, Debs, and hopefully you should be seeing my slides on full screen there.
Yes, we can. Thank you, Aoife.
I feel like a little bit of a fraud giving today's talk, because my talk is about the data stewards that almost were but haven't quite happened yet. But I'll take you on a little bit of a journey. But there's just a little bit of context first. I am research data coordinator, and when I started my role in 2018, there were very few data stewards. There was no such thing as data champions. I think there was one other person in Ireland doing a similar role to me. So it was quite a lonely place to be. And we got an opportunity to form a community, to form a network, which is SONRI, the Irish Data Stewardship Network. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about how that formed and its origins first. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about our National Open Research Forum, which is the body through which a lot of the really great work on open research is happening in Ireland. And then I'm going to talk a bit about SONRI, and then I'm going to talk about our Data Champions program, which we are still working on. It hasn't quite come to fruition yet, but it might give you some ideas of the challenges you might face along the way if you are trying to establish a network of data champions. So in 2017 is where this kind of story starts. In Ireland, with the National Open Research Forum, known as NORF, was established, and it was its primary focus is to drive open research agenda in Ireland. That was followed swiftly by a national framework on the transition to an open research environment in 2019. And that was really the catalyst which brought together a huge group of volunteers, which contributed to policy briefs, to a landscape report, and a whole host of work that culminated in a national action plan published in 2022. And that National Action Plan has some very firm actions that takes us all the way up to 2030 in really kind of solidifying Ireland's position as an open research environment. To support that National Action Plan, there was a funding call from NORF, the National Open Research Forum, called the Open Research Fund. And this is how SONRI got its first seed funding. Now, that funding was very modest. It was only for 2 years, and it just finished there recently at the end of 2024. But on the back of that funding, we did a lot of work. And just a little bit about our National Action Plan for Open Research. This document has really kind of launched open research in Ireland. It has launched so many amazing projects around the culture of open research, achieving open access, 100% open access to publications, enabling fair research, data stewardship and access to other outputs. And there's a huge body of work happening in Ireland. I suppose SONRI is kind of one of the projects within that. So really good idea to have a look at NORF, their website, and the work that's been going on in Ireland, because I just want to champion it a little bit, because I think we don't quite call out how hard we're working on this in Ireland at the moment to push this agenda forward. But to come back to SONRI, the Irish Data Stewardship Network, first of all, SONRI means data in Irish. So we are data, the Irish Data Stewardship Network. We really like data. But our mission is to foster, enable and advocate for the development of research data stewardship and data stewards nationally. As I said, when I first started, there was very few people who had a job title or a role or a remit that was centered around data stewardship, but there was an awful lot of people who were kind of working away in this area without necessarily recognition or without a way of kind of listing the core competencies that they were working towards, or, you know, creating career pathways for themselves within this. And that's where SONRI comes in. So what we aim to do is establish, or what we have done is establish, a national network across research performing organizations, funders and related services and infrastructures to build national capacity, because that's another thing. There is definitely skills gap in Ireland. There's a lack of data stewards, there's a lack of key professionals in those roles, to develop a collective voice and a pool of expertise. We centered this around 4 key kind of pillars that are core, and that's recognition. So recognition of data stewardship as a key role within the research environment and a key skill set, recognition of the work that people are already doing, and you know, elevating that work, providing support and community for existing data stewards. Professionalization is also very key as well. You know, data stewardship or data steward doesn't appear in any of our national pay scales. That can be very difficult with career paths. And also training, and this is something we've really recognized, is the importance of accredited training to actually get that recognition and to get that professionalization and to get that support at senior management levels within our institutions and organizations. And it's kind of centering around those 4 pillars, we can see this idea of data champions. You know, recognizing that we have very few data stewards within the national environment, we needed to start recognizing those researchers, those IT professionals, those archivists and librarians who are really kind of working hard to preserve and share research outputs as fair and open, or fair but closed, and, you know, are working really hard to elevate the skills of our research community without necessarily the recognition of or the job title of data steward. And this is where the data champions idea came into SONRI, and it was actually embedded in our project from the very beginning. At the funding application stage, we had this ambition to create a network of data champions nationally. And the reason why we saw it as so important, this idea of data champions, is all centered around this idea of communities. Ireland's a really small country. It's unlikely, and the budgets that our institutions and research performing organizations and infrastructures are working within are very small. it's unlikely that we're going to be in a position where we hire a whole host of professional data stewards to support all the really valuable research that is going on in terms of their ambitions of data management and FAIR. But what we can do is build communities of practice and support those already doing the work. So I like this diagram by Brian Nosek, and I see that Sonnery is really kind of centered within this pyramid of making data stewardship skills, fair and open data sharing as normal, and center it within the research communities themselves so they can adapt and adopt FAIR in a way that is meaningful for them. But I think this comes back to maybe one of our challenges. You know, if you don't have people who have data in their job title or who really recognize what they're doing as data stewardship, because that maybe isn't in their job description or hasn't been a recognized activity that they've engaged in, how do you convince them that actually what they're doing is data stewardship, or that they are a data steward as part of their role? So we came up with this list of questions, and we used it in maybe a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek way. You know, it was a little bit of a kind of a humorous thing that we took to meetings and roadshows and conferences all around Ireland, you know, and had an open conversation around, do you do any of these things? If you do any of those things, you might actually be a data steward, and that's not a bad thing. And we can, you know, do you want to become part of this discussion and think about how you could develop a career path in data stewardship if that's something that you want, or gain recognition for those tasks and not just be the data person in your group, but actually, you know, get validation and recognition for those skills and those activities that you're engaging in. And this worked really well. People really liked this. It was a really kind of a fun thing to do in the workshops that we held. And what we found is that there were lots of data stewards. Yes, we have lots of data stewards in Ireland, or maybe not data stewards, but people who are actively engaging in data stewardship without necessarily labeling it as such, and without necessarily recognizing the skills and transferable skills and core competencies that they built up over a number of years. And that was really heartening to see, because that was the genesis of our community. And then we came back to our idea of data champions, of how do we recognize these people? How do we reward them? Because currently, I suppose we're very much, our rewards and recognitions systems in Ireland are very much based on the old way of doing things, you know, around bibliometrics. So your FAIR activities are not necessarily being recognized. It's changing. The funders are changing their policies, and it is changing slowly within institutions. But how do we elevate these people and get them recognition for the work that they're doing? And we did some work as well. We did some qualitative work. We did interviews with a subset of people around Ireland to gain their views around that idea of recognition, professionalization. And there's a report on our website which has some really nice insights into people's lived experiences. But some of the things that we heard were really not that positive. You know, we had discussions around people hitting the ceiling because within their roles, because data stewardship and that job that they're doing is not necessarily being recognized on the track that they're in, that the role is not really valued within the institutions, that there isn't a career path at the moment, and you have to be careful because you can end up in a dead-end road, or you can role, or you can be siloed because what you're doing isn't really recognized within the institution, which isn't, you know, a very positive thing. It isn't a great thing about the system currently within Ireland. But again, this is where we felt, you know, champions within communities as one of the routes that we take to elevate these people, to get them recognition, to help them quantify what they're actually doing in their roles. And this is when we partnered with the Digital Repository of Ireland on a project. So the Digital Repository of Ireland is an amazing organisation based in the Royal Irish Academy in Dublin. And they are a cultural heritage repository for outputs across the island of Ireland. And it's a membership organisation, so you do have to be a member to avail and deposit into their repository. But they knew that there was lots of research out there and lots of research data out there that maybe were from researchers who were not within a membership organisation, or didn't have access to the DRI, or, you know, had data that they weren't really sure of how to archive because it's not something they had engaged in previously, but was, you know, know, valuable resources that needed to be preserved and made available into the future. And so we partnered with DRI, SONRI partnered with them, and they were bringing the repository and access to the repository, and they opened up a scheme that you could apply to. And SONRI came in with, you know, training. We did workshops with the people who were successful in applying to the pilot. And we also sourced data stewards with specific skills to partner with particular projects. On one of the projects, it really needed a native Irish speaker because it was an Irish language project. And I was able to go, oh, hey, I know a data steward who is a member of SONRI who is a native Irish speaker. So he worked on one of the projects through the DRI Legacy Data Project. And coming out of that was like, oh, this is where we can start our data champions, because this is where we have specific members of the community, researchers who are taking time out to archive their data from across disciplines. So we had an Irish language project, we had an archaeology project, there was a sociology project. So they were from different spheres, different types of research, and they're partnering with these data stewards to put their collections into DRI. So let's revisit this data champions idea. Now we came up with, I suppose, you know, we didn't really have a huge budget for this, other than maybe we can do a couple of meetings. And this is kind of the idea the definition we came up with for data champion. So an advocate and a leader within an organization or a community who promotes the value, importance, and best practice of data management, data sharing, and data stewardship. And we, you know, because I guess SONRI is based on a lot of volunteer activity, we set the bar pretty low about what sort of activities, you know, you might get involved in as a data champion. But first of all, it was like, maybe you want to be, we can write a blog post and highlight your work on our website. And that means that others within the community can find you as a person of expertise within this particular discipline who has also engaged in fair data sharing. Participation in events, maybe webinars or seminars, sharing your experience with peers and colleagues, and providing a link back to that discipline or community with the data stewardship community. So we're coming together around this. And the plan was that when the pilot finished, it finished in September of 2024, that we would have an event to kind of launch our new data champions to the national community. And we were going to have some external speakers, and it was all planned. But I suppose what happened really is we kind of ran out of road. So SONRI was finishing up in 2020, at the end of 2024, and the Data Champions program was just one stream that we were working on. We also had the interviews that I talked about. So we did over 20 interviews across the research community. We were analysing that data at the time. We had 2 reports to write, and we were engaging in other outreach activities as well, seminars and webinars, and we were launching a task and finish group to develop a micro-credential. So it was a really, really busy time of the year. So where are the data champions? Unfortunately, we didn't pull it off. We ran out of time. We ran out of funding as well in terms of budget to have an event. And it just didn't quite happen. And I think that's always the risk when you're, you know, a project on a very limited budget, on a very tight time scale, and also depending largely on goodwill and volunteer activity. That's always going to be the problem that you run into. That said, SONRI didn't finish at the end of 2024. SONRI just moved on to its next phase. So we were a funded research project for 2 years, but now we have a steering group, we have a committee, we have a very active task and finish group that is working on accredited training. And we also had to have a development strategy, which will very soon, it's just gone through the committee and steering group. It's going to be very soon on our website. But one of the key aspects of that development strategy is networking community building. And centered to that is coming back to this Data Champions program, because we really do believe that having champions within the community that can speak with authenticity and authority from a particular disciplinary perspective is really important to grow data stewardship skills and engagement with fair and open data nationally. So it's, you know, come back shortly and hopefully we'll have more to report. And when I was, you know, talking to Debs about this, I was like, I don't know if I can do this talk, Debs. I mean, can I title it Lots of Enthusiasm, but No Money and No Time? She was like, yeah, well, you know, cautionary tales are always good. But yes, we are going to revisit this. And I suppose if you want to know more about the Sonry project, we have a website, we have a very active LinkedIn page. We also have a mailing list, which is maybe not so active at the moment, but will hopefully be posting there shortly. We're also running an event, and I'll pop the link in the chat, about the CARE principles and FAIR. It's a masterclass happening with the Irish traveller community who are an Indigenous group in Ireland, and that's happening on the 20th of May. So I'll pop the link in the chat for that if anybody is interested in coming along. And I'll stop talking there. Hopefully I haven't gone too far over or anything.
No, not at all. Thank you so much, Aoife. That was such a rich presentation. And yes, I was also thrilled with this title of Lots of Enthusiasm, but No Time and No Money, because I think we're, you know, it is refreshingly honest about some of the challenges that we face with data championships. So just to reiterate what I put in the chat, we will take questions at the very end of the 4 presentations. So if you have questions for Aoife, you can choose to either put them in the chat and I'll read them out in the discussion time at the end, or you can wait to put your own hand up and ask yourself. But yeah, thanks again, Aoife, and we look forward to coming back to you in the discussion session at the end. So now I'm going to move on to our next speakers, which is 2 people from the University of Cambridge, Dr. Lutfi bin Othman and Dr. Kim Clugson. It's our absolute pleasure to welcome you, and so that we can hear more about, I think, a much more established data champion program, to learn more about your experiences at the University of Cambridge. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you both to start your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. You can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see them. Absolutely fine.
So yeah, thank you. So yes, Lutfi and I were research data coordinators at the University of Cambridge, and we both co-manage the established Data Champion program. So I'm just going to start off by just giving a brief introduction about the program and some of the numbers and the stats that we're currently at, and then Lutfi's going to finish off by sort of talking about some of the reflections and maybe some insights about the program now that we're 9 years in. So just to start off with, so who are the data champions? And really they're volunteers throughout the university, and they're anyone that's really interested in being able to manage research data or interested in research data, supporting researchers, so not just researchers. And it was established because, so Lutfi and I are part of a very small research data team that support the whole of the university. So data champions were really established to be able to reach all of the fragmented different departments, so that we could really reach all those people. And so the main goals are really so that data champions act as local points of contact for those people that need it. They're able to disseminate information. If they want to, they can provide training, and also to feed back to us. So it's useful for us to find out what are the needs within the local departments for research data management. Also, sort of more widely increase open research practices, and hopefully all in all will improve research integrity at Cambridge. So yeah, so the program was started in 2016. We're now 9 years in, so next year will be our 10 years. And every year we have an annual call for data champions. So we've actually just finished our 2025 call. We're in the middle of sort of the inductions and everything like that. So yeah, we've run nine inductions so far. So to manage the Data Champion program, as mentioned, Lutfi and I, it's part of our role as research data coordinators, and every year we have this annual call for data champions. And as part of that, we give the new data champions a welcome pack and also invite them to our introduction session. So that's a good opportunity for them to meet us, to meet other new data champions, and we also invite existing data champions to sort of talk about their experience of being a data champion. We then enroll them onto the program if they still want to take part. And as part of that, we have a data champions teams site with a SharePoint site. We have a mailing list, and if they want a web presence, they can add a web profile onto our research data website. We also email their head of departments to let them know that they've joined as part of sort of recognition for their volunteering. And we also have, since 2021, we've had this data champion school representative. So Cambridge is split up into 6 schools, and so we have a data champion from each of the schools as a school representative, and they hold termly meetings with the data champions in their school. And then Lutfi and I, we have a meeting with them. And that's just another way of kind of for them to find out what the local issues are, and feeding it back to us and sort of, finding out what the needs are. And so then we also have an annual census to check how many data champions, and an audit to contact those that maybe we haven't heard from for a while. So that's kind of how we manage the program. So if we kind of look at this community, so this is the year-on-year growth of the Data Champion program. So in the green bar is our last census, which was in December. So that's the newest data that we've got. And I mean, you can see that there's been a growth. I think the last couple of years there has been a bit of a plateau. And obviously a dip last year, but really that's from contacting and finding out if people still want to be part of the program or people might have left. So we feel like we've reached sort of this, yes, as I said, a plateau of around about 160, 170 data champions throughout the university. And yes, so that Cambridge is split up into 6 different schools. And so this shows you the number of data champions that we have per school. Arts and humanities is very low. It's something that has sort of consistently been like that. We have been trying to work on promoting that. I think Lutfi's going to mention some of those reflections when he speaks a bit later on. But yeah, you can see that there's sort of a healthy number in all of them. And again, this is just another, this is separated by departments across the university and also split by school. I mean, ideally, we would love to have a data champion in every department, and that's our aim to do that. We are getting there, but there's still, a lot of gaps, particularly in the arts and humanities. And so, as mentioned, data champions, they can hold a wide variety of roles. So in this pie chart, the green are sort of PIs, researchers, students, and that they represent about 60% of our data champions. But then, yeah, the rest, so about 40%, are non-researchers. And they can include anything from sort of IT specialists, data managers, anything like that. So I think it kind of should, and we value having lots of people from lots of different backgrounds supporting researchers, and I think that really helps the programme to be as well-rounded as possible. So how the community works, so we hold data champion forums every 2 months. So that's a 2-hour, usually 12 till 2. And we have talks from various data champions. We usually have it around a theme. The next one we're going to have in May is going to be sensitive data. The last one we had was on open research. The one before that was sort of working on data internationally. So it's lots of different themes. We're really flexible about that. And so we have some of the data champions talking. It's time to network. Lunch is provided because it's up 12 till 2, which is funded by Cambridge University Press and Assessment. And it's just a really good way of data champions getting together, hearing about maybe topics that are not that relevant, but then they might find out they are. And yeah, it's just a really nice way of those data champions coming together and to troubleshoot some of those issues. And so yeah, data champions ideally are supporting research data management locally in their area, providing training, disseminating the information, and just generally just raising awareness of research data management. On our website, if data champions choose to have a web profile, they can fill in like their expertise, and then we have an ability to for people to search for data champions that can then help them in whatever area that they need. So our expectations of data champions, because they're volunteers, it is very minimal. And we've found that, working flexibly is really the best approach. I think when the programme started, there was an expectation for them to deliver RDM training, which I think because being volunteers was it was a bit much. So that really our expectations are that they attend a forum once a year, participate in the induction session at the beginning, and attend the school rep meetings. And really, we're very flexible. People's workload changes, and really they just, if they can support research as best they can, and that they feel comfortable with. So I'll just hand over to Lutfi now.
Thank you, Kim. Morning, everyone. Thanks, Deborah, for the invite. So, as Kim mentioned, we're almost a decade in, and as part of responding to sort of the presentation prompts that Deborah shared with us, I'm just going to reflect a bit about how the program has run, especially since we have taken over, which has been since 2 years ago, basically. Next slide, Kim. So, following on from what Kim just shared of what the champions do in terms of the RDM coverage and also in terms of our expectations, these are some of the projects that we have worked with the data champions to get them engaged, but also to extend our RDM provision across the university. Ever since Kim and I joined as RDCs, or research data coordinators, on top of Claire Castle, who's a research data manager, this is the first time in the last 10 years that the research data team, which sits within the OSC, the Office of Scholarly Communications, this is the first time that the RD team has been sort of well-staffed, and we sort of have time and space and bandwidth to do more sort of luxury projects. And these here are some of them. Part of the recognition for the data champions, and also part of getting them to sort of feel the community, to be part of the community, to be active. We like to sort of keep them, sort of do some interesting things to keep them engaged. Part of it is a data diversity podcast. This is a podcast which I speak to data champions about their relationships with data management. Is based on the principle, or what I think is a philosophy, where if you just talk about their journey in research data or researching or data management, you can actually uncover a lot of interesting stories, idiosyncrasies, and things like that. And I use this podcast as a way to highlight those stories. And part of it is also to sort of bring to the fore that actually something as seemingly small as research data management, it is sort of interweaved throughout the entire research data lifecycle and the entire project. And you really uncover some really interesting things. In one podcast, we were talking to an archaeologist data champion, Stefanie Mollo, and the conversation then became about data handover and how she has data from all over the world, and how data is still left in the old universities, and sort of the complexities of being sort of this global migrant researcher, if you will. And also about a colleague who has passed on without leaving a sort of data plan, and how things like having a sort of a next of kin or a handover policy for data, research data, could be useful, and things like that. We also try to tap into the areas of expertise to create blog posts and articles that we put on our website as blog posts, such as working with different file formats and software licenses. And here we tap into data champions again, who are in that area with the file formats, is with a digital preservation specialist and things like that. And we also have working groups to sort of tackle some of the more complex issues in RDM, such as personal and sensitive data. And the outcome of these working groups could be a working paper, or even a policy change, or information that we cascade through our website and through, basically university communication channels. And we also like to organize special workshops to tackle sort of more specific areas, such as choosing a repository and metadata, which was recent workshops. And from this, we'll create outputs in the form of handouts, and change basically university policy in terms of, or university sort of directives on how to choose a repository, which will go onto the website and sort of go into our training as well. And recently as well, we tried to tackle the idea of environmental sustainability in research data. So we organized a workshop, and we worked with CUPNA, who, as Kim says, funds our forums. And we try to get experts from within the DC community and from across the UK to sort of tackle the concept of how much energy that data, research data storage and data sharing takes up, with the view of then sort of changing how we discuss what we recommend to researchers about how they should back up the storage, how often and where, and things like that. And since a couple of years ago as well, we decided to be more active in Love Data Week and Love Methods Week. And we'll invite the data champions to come along with us with our pop-ups, engage in surveys, and also to, in the future, we will actually organize more panels, which are going to be theme-based. And all these activities really is to not only tap into the area of expertise, but also to, as I said, make them feel part of the community. I think what Aoife said about enthusiasm, but no time and money, really it resonates a lot with us. So I think one of our challenges and opportunities, which I'll talk about more later, is to really sort of get them when they're enthusiastic and create activities and to really get them feeling engaged, to make them to raise the level of esteem in their role as research data champions, but also really we benefit a lot from them, so we want to really learn from them as well. Next slide, Kim. So these are some of the things that really has worked well. As Kim said, the forums, which we really encourage them to come at least once a year, but we don't make it compulsory. But I think the forums, I think we view it as the beating heart of the community. You know, if you know anything about University of Cambridge, it's a very fragmented institution, you know, with departments and schools across the city. And it's really only the forum where they come together as a community. And Kim and I always say a good forum is when we get them there, we open it up, and then things just has its own momentum, and we really had to struggle to get it to stop to have lunch or to sort of stop to vacate the premise. And that's when we know when a forum has gone well, because they are really engaging with each other. One person asks a question, and then a conversation pops up, and then it might go in several directions, but all sort of research data related. And then after the forum, they'll be hanging around, talking to each other, exchanging contacts, or even thinking about collaborations. So the forum, I think, is one of the, as I said, it's the beating heart of the community. We look forward to it. It takes a lot of time to organize it, more than the 0.2 FTE I think represents, but it's really worthwhile. I think one of the strengths and what makes the program really worth it is really having this sort of access to all these specialties and to know the nuances in RDM. I think it's impossible for an RDC or two RDCs to really cover the entire RDM sort of the breadth of knowledge that all these disciplines have. And so we really rely on the data champions to sort of fill those gaps. I think although we don't expect much from them physically in terms of attending things or attending to the forums or really sort of being active on teams, we know that we can rely on them if we have so part of the role of Kim and I as RDC is we run the query and the help desk for the university when it comes to research data management, and sometimes we get a query that is out of our sort of breadth of knowledge, and then we know we can go to a data champion from that discipline and ask them, and they really have sort of, everyone has answered the call when we needed it and provided us with sort of that subject discipline expertise. And so that has gone well and continues to go well. And I think in the future as well, in trying to think about how else and how better to engage the data champions is we're thinking of studying special interest groups. We've noticed that some data champions, they are quite, they have the initiative to start their own projects within the DC community involving other DCs and met people from across the university. And, we will sometimes work with them on that, or they can just go on and do their own thing. So I think it would be a good idea, I think, to just sort of capitalize on that and create areas where we would like to develop more of a knowledge base in, such as AI, such as data security, and get the data champions to lead those interest groups. And we would be there to support them, or they can do that on them by themselves. So this is something that we also want to work on more. Next, Kim. So so these are some of the challenges. Sorry. These are some of the challenges that we have faced, at least in our 2 years of being there. I think a big part of it is the fragmented nature structure of the university. I'll say that the second point first, because yes, it's really hard to have any control over this community. Kim and I in the university library were part of the central infrastructure of the university. Part of the university library, but each department and each sometimes even research unit, they have their own library, they have their own ethics team, they have their own policies, which they may or may not feed off the central university policy. And that can be challenging because and of course things take, when you have such a big organization, things take time if you're having to work with the central infrastructure. So they tend to just do their own thing and they do what works for them. And then sometimes we have to catch up with them or vice versa. So that can be a real challenge, because we'll have, for example, if we come up with a data handover policy, we have no way of determining that the individual teams or departments are actually using that policy. And so the DC structure, the DC program is also reflective of that. You have certain data champions who have just gone to their own thing, or they're responding to the RDM needs of their discipline, of their particular department. And it's kind of hard to sometimes have that sort of cohesion. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity, because we kind of want to allow that, because in that way, there's more innovation. But we just have to play sort of catch up a little bit. The high turnover is also a bit of a challenge in terms of the numbers. So we have, as Kim presented, 180 odd data champions officially. We would say maybe half or slightly less than half are the ones that we are in close contact with. These are the ones that come to the forum. And then every year, because people are constantly leaving, coming and going to university, maybe 10 or 20 there'll be a drop off, and we really won't know until we do this annual call to ask people if, because of their period of inactivity, if they're still around or if they still want to be a part of the program. So there's a constant flow, and the numbers constantly changing. And you will find that the 50 or so who are consistent in their engagement activity, these tend to be permanent staff. Librarians, IT people, and maybe even more senior university members. So that can be a challenge because that reflects, I guess, that sort of it can have the potential of bringing the esteem of the data champion program slightly lower when people are not engaging and they're leaving, and they see people who are constantly coming and going. So that can be a challenge to manage the community. Initial enthusiasm and participation drop-off is something we face every year. We find that when DCs first join, there'll be a period of maybe 6 months where they are really enthusiastic, they want to lead training, they have a lot of ambitions, but that tapers off a little bit. And then we have to sort of make sure that this is where us as the leads of the program, we really have to put in a lot of effort to, as I said, tap into the enthusiasm early on, which is why we came up with all these projects to keep them engaged. But this is a challenge, and this is, it could be a staffing issue as well. So lots of enthusiasm and with no time and money also represents us as leads of the program, because this is only a part of our job remit. We also doing things like DMP consultation and basically anything to do with research data in the university. It's Kim and I and Claire. So we also don't have the bandwidth to do as much as we would like with the data champion program. And yeah, so that reflects the last point, if it's university staffing, and this affects the program continuity. As I said, this is the first time in close to the decade where there are 3 people working data champion program and the research data matters. And we've been in the role for 2 years. Claire has been in 2 years as well. And before that, I think there have been sort of 3 sort of partnership combinations managing the program, and with each staffing team, there's been a different profile. We do different things to manage the community. I think this is the first time, but this is the first time, at least in my memory, where we have STEM and AHSS represented. So I come from a art and humanities and social science background, and Kim is in the STEM background, and we try to sort of have a good coverage in those 2 broad sort of divisions of the disciplines. And before that, it was maybe...
Can I just interrupt? You have about 1 minute left so that we can have enough time. Sorry.
My apologies. All right, Kim. So yeah, we'll talk about one later in the Q&A. So yeah, this is, I said, I guess the big part of the difference between what Kim and I has done. So it's still STEM heavy. This is reflecting on the code that I was asked to touch on. It's still very STEM heavy, but we found out recently that it's more to do with the idea of data being a concept that is quite foreign to art and humanities, and we've really been advocating a lot in this matter. So recently, we've had more art and humanities, social sciences data champions, and we can touch again about that. So yeah, in terms of rewarding, it's still a voluntary program, but we do offer lots of publicity, networking and training, and also job opportunities. I should say that I used to be a data champion and I moved on to this role. Claire was a data champion as well when she was a DC for chemistry, and now she's the research data manager. So we like to yeah, we would like to say that there is a future in this. Maybe this is quite different from what Aoife are presenting. There is an idea that data stewardship or a data manager is a professional role, and yeah, we would like to remind them that we're really indebted to their knowledge. Next slide, Kim. I'm just rushing through. So in terms of how we measure DC contribution to RDM maturity in the university, this is something we don't measure. This, I think, is something that was sort of something early on they wanted to measure, but we haven't done this. But what we will say is, because there are 2 research data coordinators, now there's less of a need for data champions to lead training. And often when there was 1 data coordinator and the research data manager, they needed to rely on the DCs to lead training. But so far in the last 2 years, we haven't had that need. Next slide, Kim. And yeah, that's it. I hope I sort of touched on everything. Please get in touch with us if you have any questions, and yeah, we'll stick around to the end of this program if you have any specific questions. Thank you, and sorry, Deborah, for going over time.
That's okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I think also one of your slides there also answered one of the questions in the chat, and we will be, of course, sharing the slides afterwards. But I will move on now because we only have until 12:30, and it's my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Giulia Caldoni from the University of Bologna. So we'll be first hearing from Giulia from the data stewardship side, and then maybe Giulia, you can introduce Sarah Garofalo. So we'll actually hear from a data champion themselves. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Giulia, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I hope you all see my screen.
Yes,
and perfect. I always have troubles with Zoom. I'm not used to this tool, so thanks. I wanted first of all to thank you, Deborah and Clara, for having us here today to present our experience. And I wanted to also thank the colleagues that presented before me, because it was really interesting to see such different experiences in establishing a data champion network, both coming from a national network and from a university, which is more similar to what is our personal experience that I will be showing you in a sec. And I think that you already answered a lot of my questions and of the doubts that I will present in the last slide of my presentation, but let's move on. First of all, I wanted to introduce a little bit who am I and why I am the one talking about data champions at our university. I'm one of the 4 data stewards that are working at the University of Bologna, and we've been working together as a team since 2022. So it was a really recent effort that was established in the context of major university policy on favoring open science and fair data management at university level. We have one of the objectives of our strategic plan that specifically states that one of the objective is to facilitate the development of open science, and one of the ways that this has to be done is by enabling and enhancing fair data management. That's why the team of data stewards was established. We are, as I said, 4. We are domain experts. So we are, as Lufti was saying before, and that's something that's really important for our team. We have specific disciplinary backgrounds, which help us support researchers from specific disciplinary areas. I am the one in charge for the support to the biomedical area, while my colleagues are for the social science, one colleague for the humanities, and one colleague for technological area. So that really helps us a lot, trying understanding what are the researchers' questions, what are their doubts, where they're coming from, which are the data that they're working on. But still, something that it's missing, it's the specificity for all the answers. We don't have, for all the questions, sorry, we don't have the answer to all questions because we don't work as researchers. We don't know the researchers' research as much as they do. And that's something that will be useful for me in the next slides to explain why we decided to form a data champion group. We are located in the research area, so we are a centralized office. We are not working directly with the different departments. We have 32 departments at the University of Bologna, so it's something that it's really fragmented, and we're trying to have a look, 4 of us, to all the different departments. That's something that, as the colleagues from Cambridge were saying, a little bit different in terms of fragmentation, but still it's a challenge for us. Our support to research data management is very faceted. We worked from establishing policies and guidelines with the help of the of our governance, in terms also of open science working group that we have, and our delegate for open science. But then one of our major topics of intervention is training, because since we are so few, the thing that we can work more on is advocacy, trying to explain, trying to pass the principles of open science and fair data management to our researchers as much as we can. In this landscape, we had the chance last year to participate to one of Fair Impact open calls for support to research organizations in terms of assessing our fair enabling capacities and trying to define an objective that we could work on to make our institution more fair enabling. So that's why we chose training, because that's one of our major activities. And we decided that it could be beneficial, and that's something that's been already presented a lot by the colleagues from the first 2 presentations. But we thought that having a network, establishing a network of data champions could be beneficial for us in terms of enhancing our trainings, since it could be a collaboration going on topics that were more specific, or were really specific in terms of of depth, of research depth, like I will show you in a second, but also it was really useful for us to it would be beneficial for us to understand better what are the needs of our researchers. So what are the trainings that we should be implementing as needs from the research community that we are working with. So after working with Deborah and Clara, which I still thank a lot because they were our mentors during that this walk into this support program, we decided to form a small group of FAIR champions. Namings are really not so, it's not easy to name this kind of initiatives. Like, we were thinking of naming them data champions, but then we're data stewards, so that would be really difficult to differentiate. So we went with FAIR champions. I don't think that there are many other choices, actually. If you have any other ideas, please tell us. It would be really interesting to know them. And so we gathered this group of experts, 6 experts. Sara Garofalo, which will be presenting after me, is one of them, one of our FAIR champions, which have good experience in research data management, software management, open science practices, and reproducibility. We decided to select these researchers. They are all tenured staff, so professors or senior researchers. So we don't have junior researchers or PhD in our group. We try to have as much as possible, since we kind of call them directly and ask them to be our champions, the best balance possible in terms of gender. But as you can see, it's been really difficult. We've been having a lot of positive answer from our female researchers. We had less, it was less easy to recruit male champions. And we tried as much as possible to have a disciplinary representation. So to have champions covering the broader possible group of disciplines. And they work in synergy with us in terms of disseminating good data stewardship practices and good data management practices. They are meant to have a direct contact with us data stewards, so to inform us about obstacles and challenges that researchers tend to encounter in their activities, but also they are our voice be in the middle of the researchers to promote our opportunities that we are preparing in terms of trainings, but also in terms of guidelines and policies that we've been publishing. So they share the message with their fellow researchers. So we kicked off this project, which I mentioned that we data stewards are a pretty recent group, but our champions are even more. It's an even younger group, since we kicked off this project in October 2024. So it's been running for around 6 months. And we organized, first of all, an event where we wanted to present our champions to the community. Because we wanted to highlight their role, to give them recognition, to make them known by the community. That's something that's really important. How can we give recognition to these people that are using their spare time to work with us? And during this first event, which Sarah will be talking a little bit more in a second from her perspective, we wanted to exploit the fact that having peer-to-peer communication from a researcher to another tends to be the most effective when we are talking about research-specific topics. One example, pre-registration, one specific research practice was really was one of our topics in these events, and it was really important to have the researcher's perspective on that. And yeah, that sharing these inputs from a research perspective is really important also for the academic community itself to recognize that these things actually can be done, and it's not something that is been proposed from a technical point, from an administrative point of view. It's not just some obligation that they are mandated to be compliant with, but it's something that can be done in research practice and has advantages in research practice. The main output that we've been carrying on with this group of champions has been a series of events that have all these topics in these inputs in mind. Like, we want to share the researcher's perspective. We want to give them the feeling that it's not a burden to actually operate proper data management, that there are a lot of different tools and topics that they can discuss about to be more fair enabling, more fair in their research. And we learned that having these experiences and focusing on research practices that are so specific is actually complementary to our training that we give to all researchers on principles. So we have these two layers. We talk about principles, and then our champions can go deeper in the practices. And since we data stewards can manage these practical topics as much as the researchers themselves, and having researchers talk about these topics gives a clearer perspective on incentives. What are the incentives that the researcher has from applying these topics? The next steps that we are planning are still related to training, but we would like to expand more our activities, but it's still something in our minds. And we will have 2 champions that will be directly involved in a series of training that we are preparing for researchers, for senior researchers, which are a target population that we haven't met already. And they will help us give the good example on proper research data management activities and incentives. And we, from the planning of this training, we wanted to put together our expertise with the champion expertise. And here are the challenges. I hope that I wasn't too fast or too slow with my presentation, but I really wanted to get to this slide because it's something that I would like to go deeper in the question and answer if there's chance. We have the opposite challenge from the ones that Lufti and Kim presented before. We have all senior researchers in our team of data stewards, and that's something that it's being challenging because they have really busy and tight schedules. They are enthusiast participants. They gave us a lot of good feedbacks, and they are really trying to answer positively to all our requests, but still time and trying to squeeze these activities in the senior researchers' activities, it's an issue, or professor activities. We would like to expand our team, and the 10-year expansion of the Cambridge team was something that was really inspirational. We would hope really to have 800 data champions at one point, but still we would like to have more than 6. So that's something that we would like to understand. How can we go and how can we do this in the next future? And how can we better disseminate the activities of these champions? We still don't have a website for them. And that's something that I think will be really beneficial, as you presented before. But any other idea would be really, really appreciated. I arrived to the end of my slides. So I ask Sarah if she can open up her webcam and join me.
Yes, absolutely.
Hi, Sarah. Thank
Hi,
you for being
hello,
here.
everyone.
And I'm really pleased. I will stop sharing my screen probably. So so you can share yours.
Yeah, I see that I need to receive authorization for sharing the screen. I sent a request just now.
Okay.
You have that now, Sarah, so please do share ahead.
Oh, I can do that now. Okay, that's great.
Thank you. So I'm really happy to introduce Sarah Garofalo, which is one of our fair champions, and who has offered and accepted our invitation today to present this experience from her perspective. So thank you, Sarah, and the floor is yours.
Okay, can you just confirm if you see my presentation or the other screen?
Yes, I see.
You see the presentation?
Yes,
okay, because I have 2 screens and it was a bit confusing. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so thank you all for the introduction. And I'm really happy to be here today to bring the point of view, let's say, of one of these data champions or fair champions. As I mean, I see that different names are adopted, but basically the core aim of our role is the same, because basically we are researchers, which in our case, I see that it was interesting to see in previous presentations how each university or institution handled differently how to become a fair champion. Here at the University of Bologna, we decided to call fair champion. So I've seen that maybe in somewhere it was like you could voluntarily candidate yourself as a fair champion. In this case, it was kind of an honor to be selected, not voluntarily, because of something that we have done. So this tackles a lot, because I've seen that also one of the main topics was about recognition. And I really agree with that, because up to now, it always seemed like within the research community, I'm mainly a researcher as, let's say, junior professor. It seems like, caring about open science and open science practices, it's still up to those who are sensible to this topic. So seeing that there is a recognition for the effort, the extra effort that people that try to follow open science practices is recognized, from your institution is really, really rewarding and nice. So I wanted to, share this thought with all the organizers of the initiative, and also within my university. But so, as I said, I am a junior professor, or if you will, senior assistant professor at the Department of Psychology. My expertise are mainly in the fields of neuroscience and psychometrics, so statistics. But within the FAIR champion role that I've been given, we mainly discussed about, as also Julia was mentioning, we each of us has a different expertise, so comes from a different background, but we really try also to discuss things from a multidisciplinary point of view. So one of the first events after being recognized, let's say, as a fair champion, one of the first events that also Julia mentioned, in which we were actively involved, not just me, but along with the other fair champions, was this so-called Fairy Day that happened in October. This was like the kickoff, we could say, event. It was a day-long event. It was not online, so we were all in presence in the same room, which was really nice to actually meet all the people. And it was a very nice event for many things, because I think that especially sometimes we are very scattered, as Julia was mentioning, we are not that many yet. At the University of Bologna. And so being scattered across departments, which sometimes in our case are also in different cities, not even within the same one. I mean, this event really gave us the chance to actually meet other people that care as much as you do about open science practices. So this was quite nice. And also gave us the practical opportunity to see the open science practices from other people's points of view and experiences. Because there was this session 3 that was dedicated to presenting us and introducing our role as fair champions. But then the other sessions of the day were also really focused on specific topics, okay, discussing how, for example, discussing the current initiatives, but for example, a lot of time and a lot of question in the Q&A session, which was at the very end of this day, was actually dedicated to legal advices, which is also another topic which is really, really important in open science and data sharing practices that usually is not necessarily available in departments. And this is not only true, for example, for my department of psychology, but for any department which is not the Department of Law, probably. And so I remember and I recognize this huge need, this eager in understanding more also about the legal components of the open science and data sharing processes, which are really, really important and really, really hard also sometimes to follow and understand for people who are not from that field. And so as I was saying, so this was like the very first event, the very first time in which we met in person, in which I also had the chance to meet my colleagues from other departments. And then this was the second event, I mean, in which I was involved, which is the Open Science Corner initiatives. As also Julia was mentioning, I mean, a lot of the effort in this first stage of the initiative from us has been going towards the teaching, basically, initiatives. And this series of events falls within that realm. So I was personally involved in the first event or topic that I have listed here in this slide, so about pre-registration. But then there will be many other topics being covered. And this is a series of lectures which is focused on giving very specific, detailed and practical, information about how to do things, how to do a pre-registration, how to do, for example, a data management plan, for which we have help, of course, from our administrative offices, but some part is also responsibility of the researcher. For example, there was a discussion also about transformative agreements, which is also a huge topic for open access publishing, and well, many things. Many topics were covered. The choice for this was to have them online, but the first session, would be would be available online later on, but then we were all simultaneously present during the lecture so that people at the end could ask questions. And in my case, in the case of my event about pre-registration, that was really, really nice, because the final part of that lecture was taken a lot, was really, really involved a lot of people, all of students. Mainly there were PhD students, postdocs, maybe not so many master students, but I think some of them also, if they were at a very early stage in being interested in the research career, and some of them are surprisingly already aware of the importance of open science practices. But what I was saying is that, that final session was really, really interesting for me, and my colleague, because this was done simultaneously by me from the Department of Psychology and another colleague from the Department of Economics. So we could also share what is in common and what differs in the practices, for example, of pre-registration. That was really, really interesting too. And then in the end, we could also answer to all the questions that students had from both perspectives. So the fact that these are available online also for subsequent use, I think it's still really important, because maybe not everybody can join always at the same time. Nowadays we are really, full of meetings. So they can be there as a little treasure that can be, taken advantage of by anyone later on. So this was a nice choice, but also I really, really enjoyed the fact that the first meeting, at least, we were online at the same time, and we could take advantage of all the questions that students had. So basically, these are the two main practical things in which we have been involved so far. But from it, it's also nice if we want to do a meta reflection, let's say, on this. I think there are many positive side effects that came from these two. First one would be the natural continuity between events, because it was from the Fairy Day event actually that was born. Probably the idea was born before, and I wasn't really aware of that, but the general idea of the Open Science Corner was born before. But actually, for example, the fact of adding also a lecture on pre-registration is an idea that definitely was born during that day, because it was one of the topics that was mainly discussed, and many questions were asked from the people present that day about pre-registration. And so we decided, okay, we should really cover this topic. And it was nice to see how that also helped us to, shape the path that is most important to follow for the people that then, in the end, have to benefit from these initiatives. So the community engagement, I also mentioned a little bit. I really, really enjoyed the fact that, I really felt that I was part of a community of colleagues as interested as I am in open science practices, but also about the students. And it was also nice to see how they are curious and interested in many topics, some of which also that maybe we didn't pay that much attention to. But these helped us realize, okay, other fields or other things that should be covered in following events.
Sorry, Sarah, we have 1 minute before we have to move to some questions. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I already mentioned that it fosters some collaboration and between colleagues and between departments. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, just to be very, very quick, it was really, really nice to recognize not only the expertise, but the effort that we all put into these initiatives and into making open science a reality in our research practice. So that's it for me. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you so much. And sorry to cut you short a bit there at the end, but we do want to make sure we have time for at least 1 or 2 questions. So I'll hand over to Clara to take some questions.
Yeah, thank you very much all for your very insightful presentations. And we will go quickly to the questions because time's short. I think there were some good questions already in the chat, so let's do a couple of those, and then maybe if somebody has a burning question that hasn't right in the chat, we can also get that
Shall
one.
I just, I noticed that there was I tried to think of some questions that everyone could answer because we don't have so much time. So I did think there was quite an interesting question there on the diverse backgrounds of data stewards. Sorry, let me just have a look. Was that the diverse background of data champions? Catherine, could you just clarify that for me? Does the diverse,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so does the diverse background of data champions make it harder to professionalize data stewardship? Yeah.
Sorry, Deborah. No, I really meant data stewards. So
Okay.
when you're looking at researchers, libs, archivists, the full gamut of people responsible for some form or aspects of data stewardship, what sort of impacts does that have in terms of professionalizing it? Data stewardship. Sorry, I didn't turn my camera on. I should have.
And thank you for joining us from Australia. So would any of the panelists like to take that question?
Hi, Debs. I kind of started answering it in the chat there. I think that the diverse background is it's a challenge, but I also think it's an asset, because I think we have to keep in mind that professionalization of a role doesn't mean that everybody has to come from the same perspective or be the same. It's not, professionalization is not standardization. And I think that because of the breadth of research that's out there in terms of a research data steward, you can have all different flavors of research data stewards coming from different perspectives, and that is actually more likely to meet the community needs. I think if all research data stewards have a very narrow view of their role, we'll still end up with gaps in terms of what the actual research community needs. I do think, though, the challenge is coming to an accepted or an agreed framework of core competencies, that we agree that all data stewards have these core competencies, and then that is enriched by their previous experience, their previous experience in libraries or as archivists or as researchers or in IT or as infrastructure providers, because I guess I've met data stewards or people who have data stewardship skills in that whole rainbow of roles. And I think as it emerges as a new role, we can be quite broad in our understanding of who can work towards professionalization and becoming a professional data steward. Does that?
No,
that's my
fabulous answer. Yeah. Great. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Julia, you can add something?
Yes, I totally agree with what Aoife was saying, and I wanted just to add that there are so many nuances to data stewardship that it's impossible to think that one person alone could be able or could be formed enough to do everything, to do all the job. I'm thinking mainly of all the legal or ethical aspects that are fundamental for data stewardship and data management, but it's impossible to think of one person like having all the knowledge on privacy laws and then IPR and then knowing about storage and then about metadata with enough proficiency to support the researchers. And so something that I wanted to show in my slides was the integrated approach that we are using here at the University of Bologna. Like, we data stewards are a single point of contact, but then we ask, and we have a lot of integration with the privacy office, the IP office, our repository, which is managed by the libraries. And now we had this layer with the data champions, which help us go deeper into practices that we cannot alone ourselves know, because that's not what we do daily. So I think that it's really important, as Aoife was saying, to have all these nuances together. But thanks, the question was so interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, there's also a question or comment in the chat from Domi that is also related to multidisciplinarity. I don't know if Tommy, you want to participate in the discussion?
Hello.
Or yes, so that, oh, hi.
Yes, sorry, I'll just open my camera so you can see me as well. Hello from Sheffield Hallam University. So I'm an open research champion myself, and I seem to have an issue sometimes with people, especially researchers from different disciplines, understanding what we mean by data and how we can use open format on data. So my question is really, do you have any advice in terms of your experience, how you support especially humanities and art and social sciences, psychology researchers to translate those FAIR principles onto the data that they're working with?
I think I can have a go with this. I think this is a challenge we face. So from our perspective, from the official perspective, if you can call it that, anything that goes into your hypotheses, answers your research questions, or goes into your research output, we consider as data. But in the art and humanities, especially, I think the idea of data almost throws them off engagement. So we actually did sort of a pop shows slash pop-up slash roadshow at one of the sort of the Sidgwick site, which is the arts and humanities area in Cambridge, to ask people what they sort of consider these things that go on to build onto their research outputs. And we've got a mix between some say they do have data, some say it's research objects, research material. In fact, the social sciences, so psychology, sociology, history, archaeology, I think these are the ones that deal with data. So I'm an ethnomusicologist, so ethnography and music. But because I deal with anthropological methods and deal with research participants, I think of it as data. But then the challenge is different because then it means seeing a human being as data. So it's a sort of a different complexity. So we try to sort of meet them where they are. If it's research objects, then fine, we'll talk about research objects. But then how do you manage your research objects and research materials? And we normally find that MPhil to PhD, these are the ones that have this challenge. But if you're doing primary research, I think more often than not, you'll think of it as data. But so the idea is then to say that data is just not numbers. It's not just numbers, rather, but artifacts, maps, images, anything that goes to answer your question, your research question, is data. But I think this is something we need to move away from, and we're trying to do this. Obviously, data champion is quite challenging, which is why I think advocacy, maybe echoing what Julia said, we really have to advocate and go to them and say that, look, this is data. It started from open science, now it's open research. We're moving away from that, but the language is still how it is, but this applies to you. So whenever we do, and we also try to get in as early in their PhD onwards journey as possible. So we go in, we try to turn up inductions. I think that's the opposite of what Julia has going on in the university, where it's senior university members. But I think to have culture change is to come and get them as early as possible. And the PhD students now in 10 years will be senior researchers. So hopefully they'll be, and this maybe reflects what Sarah was saying as well, where you get MPhil or ECRs who already are very familiar with data, the data movement, if you will. But yeah, it's an ongoing challenge. So in languages, in what one data champion calls the classic humanities or the pure humanities, classic studies, languages, Nordic languages, and things like that, it is still quite a challenge. But then we also introduce other RDM concepts like bibliography, maybe your notebook is your data, and things like that. So I hope that answers your question. And we'd like to learn about, we're still facing this challenge, so we'd like to hear what everyone says as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're already beyond the end time. It's a pity because it's such an interesting topic, and the presentations gave so many insights. But I guess we will need a follow-up at some point. Yeah, thank you all very much for your presentations, and thank you, the audience, for joining. I hope you enjoy, and the presentations did answer your questions. So yeah, I'll give the floor to Deborah also to thank you, and then a final message from Al about project updates.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm just going to very quickly say thank you so much for all of the presenters for being so willing to share their insights. It's been really, really interesting, and I only wish we had more time to discuss this, but we often volunteer ourselves for more work in this topic because it's so interesting. So I'll just invite Al to share one final slide, which is a plug for another event. But while Al is sharing the slides, I would say thank you also for the audience for attending and asking all of the really interesting questions too. So thank you. And over to Al.
Thank you, Deborah, and Clara, and to all of our speakers today. I think, yeah, there's certainly another hour or so we could go on with plenty more that we could talk about. But just as we say, there are more fair implementation workshops. I've just copied a link into this. The next one is on Meet the Software hash identifier. Do one thing and do it well, hosted by our colleague Moraine, who has a number of interesting points to raise on this topic. Has a fascinating agenda to it too. So just to go onto our website, the recording and the slides will all be uploaded to the Fair Implementation Workshop page on the event webpage that you use to register for this event. So I think at this point, I'll say thank you to everyone for joining, and do enjoy the rest of your day, morning, afternoon, or evening as well. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.